Right, back live tonight. President Cyril Ramaphosa spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says South Africa is aware of its legal obligation. This is ahead of the Russian President Vladimir Putin's expected trip to the country for the BRICS summit in August. It comes after the International Crime Court issued an arrest warrant for him due to the Ukraine war. For more on this, we're joined now by Africa-Asia Dialogue Senior Research Fellow Thembisa Fakude. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. It seems South Africa is caught between a rock and a hard place, I suppose, of wanting the ICC in some instance to hold African leaders and all leaders, I suppose, accountable, yet on the other end, being very vocal and critical of it for not doing that, but only targeting African leaders. But one says, well, you can't have your cake and eat it. What do you do in that instance?
Well, yeah, as I say, South Africa is caught between the rock and a hard place. They threatened in 2016, if you remember, to pull out of the ICC. But that decision was rescinded by the conference of the ANC in December. So South Africa is back again, fully entrenched within the ICC. And now they find themselves in a much more difficult spot. You remember what happened to Hassan Omar al-Bashir when he visited South Africa, and South Africa was criticized for not having executed the arrest of Omar al-Bashir. So we'll have to see what's going to happen this time around. The Russians have dug in its heels that Vladimir Putin will visit South Africa, and South Africa once again will be forced to act on Vladimir Putin. But whether South Africa is big enough to arrest the nuclear powerhouse leader still has to be tested.
Now, of course, as you mentioned, the Omar al-Bashir matter, that was after the fact that it was taken to the courts and the courts have declared. So if South Africa does not effect that a warrant of arrest, I mean, essentially that would mean, one, the Minister of Police is in contempt of court, possibly the Minister of Justice in contempt of court, and maybe even the whole entire cabinet in contempt of court. What would that mean?
Well, back to square one, isn't it? We are back in the same situation as we were with Omar al-Bashir, and it's going to be a huge embarrassment to South Africa. I mean, there was no one holding a gun into our heads when we decided to ratify the Rome Statutes. We wanted to be part of the club, and the club has got certain rules and regulations. Understandably, that the ICC has had selective justice when it comes to African leaders, and that's why South Africa was seen as a hero by many African countries in 2016 when it threatened to leave. But that decision has been rescinded, and South Africa has committed itself into being part of the ICC, and this time around it has to act. So it's going to be interesting come August this year when Vladimir Putin is due to visit this country.
So, I mean, what are the interests here that are being weighed? South Africa wants to be part of the G40, wants to play with the big guys, but also South Africa values the BRICS relationship. It's particularly becoming more interesting now with the coming in of the other countries who also want to be a part of this bloc. And probably which is why Putin wants to come and be a part of it, but also for him to show that he's got, I suppose, solidarity from his brothers in the BRICS bloc.
Yes, and this is one of those very important meetings of BRICS. As you correctly say, there are many countries that have indicated that they want to join BRICS, including Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. So it's a very important meeting, this one, because that's where we are likely to hear an announcement of some sort accepting these countries. So Vladimir Putin will want to be part of that announcement. He will want to be part of that meeting. But South Africa has got no choice. South Africa has to act on Vladimir Putin because they are part of the ICC. And as I said earlier on, no one held the gun in South Africa's head when they decided to join the ICC. So if they don't act this time around, it will be a huge embarrassment to President Cyril Ramaphosa, particularly him being part of the G20. But also South Africa as a country will be seen as a country that flip-flops. Already we are criticized for our stance at the UN when it comes to the war between Ukraine and Russia. We have decided to sit on the fence, notwithstanding the evidence and the pictures that continue to come of destruction and killing of women and children and displacements of thousands of people. So we are in a very, very serious situation this time around.
So do you think the South African government, certainly maybe even President Cyril Ramaphosa, could dare request Putin not to come and to maybe send a video link of some sort to make that statement at the summit?
I think those negotiations are already afoot, because this is not only about South African government acting or not acting. You are likely to have the human rights organization in South Africa making noise. There's going to be a huge sideshow. You are actually even likely to have some of the NGOs coming to South Africa specifically for that occasion. So besides the government expectation to act in this regard, there's going to be a sideshow. And that sideshow is meant to want to embarrass Vladimir Putin when he comes here. But there are some who might even attempt citizen arrest of Vladimir Putin if they do get a chance to be close to him. So overall is an embarrassment, but overall is exactly what the ICC intended to do. That is to shrink the space, the traveling space of Vladimir Putin, where we have over 123 members of the ICC. So which means, therefore, that every time he has to, or he plans to travel to those countries, like it is the case this time around, he has to think twice. And those countries are also expected to act, plus coupled with the sideshow that I've just spoken about.
What's the warning here for South Africa that generally likes to punch, I suppose, above its weight, and even in this instance, wanting to be a part of this ICC grouping, besides, of course, having other reservations and other friends who they would like to keep, who are otherwise not a part of this ICC protocol?
Well, I think the horse is bolted in terms of lessons for South Africa. When we joined the World of Nations around about 95, 96, we went ahead to ratify and we joined all the treaties and the clubs that are there around the world. One, mainly to encourage multilateralism, but secondly, to be part of this new world order. And as a new country that was born, in inverted commas, post 1994, we wanted to show the world and assure the world that we were for democracy, we were for multilateralism. And I think now the test is here, and we have to be seen to be, really meaning to be part of those countries that promote democracy and multilateralism. And I think this is one of the first time, after a very long while, that we are tested once again in terms of our commitment to multilateralism.
Yeah. Speaking of the New World Order, I had one expert saying that Russia and China, by and large, and probably what would be represented by the BRICS bloc, with Saudi Arabia and Turkey now being there, would be a picture of a New World Order. And South Africa is therefore trying to position itself in that particular New World Order. Is it too early to say so?
Yes, I think it's too early to say so, especially under the tenure of President Cyril Ramaphosa, who sits very comfortably within the G20, the only African country, by the way, the African leader who represents Africa in the G20. We know that the G20 has moved to propose inclusion of the African Union, but so far President Cyril Ramaphosa is liked and appreciated well over, particularly by the Western countries. He was the first one to be invited by King Charles, if you remember. He enjoys a very close relationship with Joe Biden of the United States and is largely welcomed by the Western countries. So he finds himself in a much more complicated position. You must remember, by the way, that the membership of BRICS was not negotiated by Cyril Ramaphosa, but it was negotiated by Jacob Zuma. So he inherited that membership. So we will have to wait and see what's going to happen. But I doubt if President Cyril Ramaphosa will favor BRICS and its new partners over the Western alliances, particularly G20.
Yeah. Would you want to put your head on the block? Is Vladimir Putin going to be arrested?
He's not going to be arrested. Vladimir Putin is the leader of the nuclear powerhouse in Russia. South Africans are very pro-Russia. EFF has already said that nothing will happen to Vladimir Putin. Russia has said as well that if anything happens to Vladimir Putin, it will be a declaration of war. The best thing that you will have to do is to stay away from South Africa. So besides him not being arrested in this country, I think the sideshow will be very embarrassing for him if it does come to South Africa. You are likely to see protests. You're likely to see people attempting to arrest him. You're likely to see a lot of amplification on the pavement conference they're called. So I think the best for him to save his face and avoid embarrassment is for him to stay at home.
Yeah. Last minute change maybe of the venue of the conference. I mean, how important is it for South Africa to have this conference happen here?
Well, it's important. I mean, South Africa is always, as we said earlier on, biting way above its weight. And BRICS meeting is very important, but it comes at a very crucial time. I mean, South Africa just had those joint drills with Russia and China, and now we're having this summit that's coming in August. At the same time, we have Ukrainians who are complaining. By the way, Ukrainians supported South Africa during the days of apartheid, notwithstanding what we've been hearing, that it was Russia, it was actually the USSR, and the USSR consisted of various countries, including Ukraine, where most South Africans resided. So South Africa is caught between the rock and a hard place. It will have to, one, please the new alliances, but at the same time, I don't think it's ready to forsake its relationship with the Western countries, particularly G20.
Thembisa, Fakude, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on, as always, Senior Research Fellow at the Africa-Asia Dialogue there. Yeah, outlining for us, of course, the importance of South Africa to respond to that warrant of arrest, but also weighing in, of course, the weight of the relationship within the BRICS bloc and within the G20 nations.